House fires are a terrifying ordeal that many people hope to never experience. The loss of a newborn baby in such a scenario would be a devastating shock that no one should have to endure. However, imagine the unimaginable. Over 5 years later, receiving a life-altering revelation that shakes your world. Sometimes unconventional or even bizarre means can lead to discovering the truth. Have you ever had your life transformed by a birthday party, bubble gum, and watching CSI? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Midnight Investigator. Today, we delve into the extraordinary case of Delimar Vera. This story can only be described as unbelievable in every conceivable way. Even Hollywood would find it laughable. Now, let's dive back into today's mind-boggling case. So grab a coffee, take a seat, and get ready for the deep dive into the case of Delimar Vera. Philadelphia, the sixth most populous city in the United States, is a place filled with history and diverse neighborhoods. But amidst its charms, we uncover a tale in a humble neighborhood on Hurley Street. Here, we meet the Cuevas family, Pedro and Luz, Puerto Rican immigrants. They lived happily in their two-story townhouse with their two sons, Wilfredo and Israel, aged 5 and 4, respectively. On December 5, 1997, their first daughter, Delimar Vera, was born, becoming the apple of their eye. Language barriers made it challenging for Pedro and Luz, who primarily spoke Spanish, but it was never a significant issue in their day-to-day lives. However, when Delimar was born, Pedro faced a challenge understanding the paperwork required for the birth certificate. In the end, he chose not to sign it, fearing he didn't fully comprehend its contents. This detail would become crucial later in the case. The Cuevas family had a close-knit extended family, and their relatives frequently visited their home. After Delimar's birth, the visits increased as family members sought to lend a hand with the newborn. One such visit occurred on December 15 when Pedro's cousin, Carolyn Carrillo, dropped by. The encounter between Carolyn and Luz was awkward, given their limited connection. Carolyn's presence was uncomfortable, and the conversation struggled to find common ground, except for the fact that Carolyn also recently had a baby. However, her baby wasn't present during the visit. During Carolyn's visit, Luz busied herself with putting Delimar to bed in the front upstairs bedroom. She then continued with her household chores, while Carolyn waited for Pedro to finish repairing her car. Carolyn abruptly left the house, only to return moments later, claiming she had forgotten her purse upstairs. After leaving again, she vanished, leaving Luz and her 3 children in the house. As Luz proceeded with her chores, she suddenly heard a loud banging noise coming from the second-floor bedroom. Alarmed, she rushed upstairs to investigate. To her horror, she discovered the room engulfed in orange flames, with smoke billowing from the open window. Neighbors who saw the flames tried to extinguish them with a garden hose, but their efforts were in vain. In a panic, Luz desperately fought through the flames to reach Delimar's crib, only to find it empty. The bedroom window was wide open. Overwhelmed with despair, Luz's screams echoed through the house as she tried to save her 2 sons. Firefighters arrived and worked swiftly to contain and extinguish the fire, but it was too late. Although Luz's sons escaped unharmed, she sustained burns to her hands and face from her attempt to reach Delimar's crib. In her anguish, Luz repeated the same words to the firefighters. Someone had stolen her daughter. However, without any evidence, her claims were dismissed as shock-induced confusion. The firefighters searched the burnt-out bedroom, but found no human remains, only a small yellow package that turned out to be bedding. The fire was attributed to a makeshift extension cord attached to a space heater near the crib. Arson was ruled out, and it was concluded that the fire was accidental due to the flammable nature of extension cords combined with space heaters. Without any physical evidence, Delimar's body was presumed to have been incinerated in the intense heat of the blaze. Devastated but refusing to believe her daughter had perished, Luz's persistent hope led her to seek legal help. Unfortunately, the cost of private investigators and lawyers was beyond her means. The grief and trauma took a toll on Luz and Pedro's relationship, eventually leading to their separation in January 2004. More than 6 years after Delimar's presumed death, a remarkable twist unfolded in January 2004. Luz attended a birthday party in Kensington, hosted by Pedro's sister Evelyn. Among the attendees were Carolyn and her daughter Elia. As Luz surveyed the children, her gaze fixed on a particular girl who bore a striking resemblance to her son. This little girl had a familiar smile, dark hair, deep brown eyes, and distinctive dimples. Dimples that matched those of Luz's son. Luz couldn't explain her overwhelming feeling, but she knew deep down that the girl she was staring at was none other than her own daughter, Delimar. In a matter of minutes, Luz formulated a plan. Pretending that Elia had bubble gum stuck in her hair, she offered to remove it. While feigning this act, she discreetly collected some of Elia's hair and placed it in a paper napkin. It may sound implausible, but Luz had watched enough CSI episodes to know that a DNA test was the only way to prove the girl's identity. Despite the skepticism and the expensive nature of the test, Luz managed to persuade someone to conduct the DNA test. The results were unequivocal. Elia Hernandez was, in fact, Delimar Vera. This astounding revelation begged the question: how did Delimar end up in Carolyn's care? Carolyn Carrillo was Pedro's cousin through marriage, and though they were friendly, they weren't particularly close. Carolyn had 3 children from previous relationships and had undergone sterilization. However, when she entered a new relationship with a man named Andrew Moore, he desired a child. Unfortunately, Carolyn was no longer able to conceive. It is speculated that Carolyn suffered from pseudocyesis, a psychological disorder where a woman falsely believes she is pregnant and exhibits symptoms of pregnancy. Not long before the fire, Carolyn had informed several family members that she was around 8 months pregnant. Seizing the opportunity during Pedro's absence, Carolyn allegedly devised a plan to take Delimar. On that fateful day, Carolyn had asked Pedro to repair her car, staying in the house with Luz. Speculation suggests that she discovered Delimar during this time and saw a chance to fulfill her fabricated pregnancy. With Luz occupied and Delimar's age aligning perfectly with Carolyn's false pregnancy timeline, Carolyn seized the moment. Sneaking upstairs, she smuggled a 10-day-old baby out of the bedroom through the open window. She then left the house, returned after a brief absence to retrieve her purse, and set the bedroom on fire. The fire rapidly consumed the room, obliterating any trace of Delimar. Carolyn avoided contact with the outside world for several days before returning home to Andrew. She claimed to have given birth alone at home, filing for a birth certificate that listed her as the sole attendant to a home birth on January 6, 1998. Carolyn subsequently moved to Wellingborough, New Jersey, and spent the next 6 years raising Elia, formerly known as Delimar. She entered her in pageants and various small acting roles. In 1999, Carolyn admitted to Andrew that he wasn't Elia's biological father, leading to a private DNA test. The reason for this additional lie remains unclear. Elia's groundbreaking DNA test results led to Carolyn's arrest. She was charged with kidnapping, arson assault, concealing the whereabouts of a child, and interfering with the custody of a child. During her trial in 2005, Carolyn's defense argued that she suffered from pseudocyesis and genuinely believed Delimar was her child. They also suggested that Carolyn must have had an accomplice on the night of the kidnapping, attempting to shift blame onto Pedro. Furthermore, they claimed that Pedro's absence from the birth certificate indicated he didn't want to acknowledge Delimar as his child. Pedro vehemently denied these accusations. The prosecution contended that Carolyn's actions were deliberate and calculated, denying Pedro and Luz the opportunity to raise their daughter for 6 years. Carolyn showed little remorse in court, apologizing only for the confusion caused to both families. The judge found Carolyn to be more manipulative than delusional and sentenced her to a minimum of 9 years in prison for arson and abduction. The maximum sentence was 30 years. Following the revelation, Delimar, now legally named Delimar Vera, was reunited with Luz. The reunion was accompanied by psychological challenges, as Delimar had grown up believing Carolyn was her mother. Language barriers added another layer of complexity, as Luz primarily spoke Spanish, while Delimar had been raised in an English-speaking household. Psychologists closely monitored the situation, unsure of the impact it would have on Delimar's trust and relationships. Despite these obstacles, Delimar has now grown into a woman, happily married to a man named Desire, and they have a child of their own. She works in HR as a talent advisor for a rental company. Carolyn served 9 years of her sentence before being released on parole in 2013. She has a lifelong ban on contacting Delimar or her family. Her current whereabouts and the details of her life after release remain unknown. And that concludes our story for today. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this case. Do you believe Carolyn had an accomplice? Was Pedro involved, or was he an innocent grieving father? Do you think Carolyn received an adequate sentence for her crimes? Please share your opinions. I'll be covering more typical true crime cases in the future, but it was refreshing to explore a story without murder this time. Thank you for joining us today. Take care of yourself and others, and stay safe.